Hi again. The topic of this lesson is ethnocentrism. Refer to the 4th and 5th pages of your second study guide, and you can also find some information about ethnocentrism in chapter 2 in the text. First and foremost, this is a rather imposing word. It basically boils down to the fact that one considers his or her culture to be superior to all others. It's more rational, it's more beautiful, it's closer to perfection. And for people who feel this way, they're going to judge all other cultures from the perspective of whose culture. If you said their culture because they think it's superior, you're exactly right. Now bear in mind that we're talking about something that is a universal human reaction. Actually, William Graham Sumner referred to ethnocentrism in this way. But as you look at his definition, bear in mind again that ethnocentrism is found in some form or fashion in all human societies. No group or society has a monopoly on it. For example, some societies refer to themselves using a title that suggests that they're special, maybe even blessed by a supernatural power or powers. For example, the ancient Hebrews referred to themselves as God's chosen. The Yanomami Indians of South America refer to themselves as true human beings. They weren't at all surprised when Napoleon Chagnon, an American cultural anthropologist / ethnographer, came to study them, because they were real human beings. He, on the other hand, wasn't quite human. Now at the same time, we are talking about something that is, notice, learned, both deliberately, intentionally, and subtly. This is not something we're born with. We acquire it. When it comes to being deliberately taught or encouraged, think about institutionalized rituals, like the Pledge of Allegiance, or through the use of religious teachings and artifacts, we learn that ours is the only true faith. On the other hand, we may pick up ethnocentrism unintentionally, subtly. Jokes that reflect stereotypes about other ethnic categories. I grew up, because I'm in part of Irish ethnicity, again, being the butt end of a lot of jokes related to stereotypic views of the Irish. Like, well, where does an Irish family go on vacation? Well, to a different bar. The stereotype there is anybody who's of Irish ethnicity, again, likes to drink. People laugh. I even laughed at some of these jokes when I heard them as a young person, without realizing they were reinforcing ethnocentric notions and ideas. On the other hand, we sometimes employ loaded labels, and we attach them to stereotype categories and groups, such as, watch those people, they're a bunch of thieves, they'll steal you blind, or all those people care about is money. So bear in mind again, this is not something we're born with. On the other hand, recognize that there are some major effects of ethnocentrism. Ethnocentrism does have certain advantages, because it can reinforce group unity, loyalty, and morale. Think of it as a kind of glue that can hold a group or a society together. And in this way, it can reinforce processes such as patriotism, nationalism, and dedication to one's religion. But if you focus on the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th effects, you'll notice disadvantages. On the one hand, ethnocentrism can produce or lead to a lot of misunderstandings of others. Think of it as a biased viewpoint. It almost encourages a small-mindedness and a dismissal of other ways of thinking and behaving. It can also limit change. Why in the world would you want to change what is wonderful, great, and perfect? So change can come to be perceived as inappropriate, wrong, immoral. And at the same time, ethnocentrism can restrict cooperation between or among groups and societies. The notion of why in the world would we cooperate with them? They have everything to gain, we have everything to lose. And maybe some of you reflect on the fact that there are lots of problems we as humans confront, that if we could somehow reduce our ethnocentrism and cooperate, we might be able to solve those problems pretty efficiently. Finally, ethnocentrism is going to limit or restrict assimilation. In large part, it literally denies the basic unity of humankind. It leads us to create divisions among humans, despite the fact that we humans are all members of the same species, Homo sapiens sapiens. Now, these negative effects are sometimes linked to the following. Look at the first one, biological inferiority. It's entirely possible that if people not only consider themselves to be culturally superior, but then they start thinking that, well, maybe we're physically and mentally superior as well. The end result of this kind of thinking could be, in some cases, racism, sexism, ageism, and the like. On the other hand, with ethnocentrism, people sometimes may believe that they're not only culturally superior, but these other people are not just culturally inferior, they're not quite human. The end result of this could be, in extreme cases, genocide, or what's referred to more recently as ethnic cleansing, the systematic destruction of another group or category of people. Ideologies often will reinforce, both directly and indirectly, ethnocentrism. Complex sets of ideas and beliefs that are then used to explain, to justify in some form or fashion. An illustration of this, and it fits in, by the way, with the next kind of negative side effect of ethnocentrism, a civilization mission. One group, thinking itself to be culturally superior, takes up on itself, because it is so superior, the task of civilizing the inferiors. This might be graphically illustrated, these last two effects, ideological support and a civilization movement or mission, by looking at a painting by Gast from some years ago. What you see is Lady Columbia. Notice she's emerging from the light, heading westward toward the darkness. She's carrying with her a school book, dangling from her right arm, and she's extending this behind her left hand, is a telegraph wire. Notice she's accompanied by Western pioneers. And in the background, again, you see the advent of technology. In this particular case, a steam locomotive. Lady Columbia is bringing the benefits of civilized life to, again, the uncultured, the inferiors. Notice she's driving ahead of them, Native Americans and bison, who are just kind of, again, both of these squatters that need to be removed. Now, one way to avoid the negative side effects of ethnocentrism is to practice, and this might be the most difficult thing I'm going to ask you to do during the entire course, cultural relativism. Notice again this cartoon. That's ethnocentrism. Likewise, you can see ethnocentrism at work in this cartoon. Can you pick up on the cultural misunderstandings on both parts? Or what about this one? So, to be culturally relative, and again, as I said before, this is extremely difficult to do. You're being asked to view another culture in an unbiased fashion. John Fitzgerald Kennedy illustrated it in a way in this famous statement in 1963. To really appreciate and understand another culture, it's important to view it from its perspective or point of view. So the customs, the behaviors, the thinking, the practices, the material items of another culture ought to be analyzed, understood from the point of view or the perspective of the culture of which they are part. This whole notion is based upon the argument that every culture has a logic that makes sense to its members. Cultural relativism encourages us to try to understand that logic. It doesn't mean we have to approve it or accept it. It's very important you remember this. This is not a moralistic notion. Well, if they're doing it, then we ought to be doing it. Nope. Rather, again, try to understand a practice, an approach, from the perspective of the culture of which it is a part. Literally, if you will, when you talk about cultural relativism, be it both in a direct and an indirect way, the notion is, again, to understand. If anything, cultural relativism advocates respect. I repeat, respect for cultural differences. And you can see this referenced at the top of the 5th page of your second study guide. Again, you don't have to approve of another culture. Rather, you're trying to understand it. We'll pick up here in the next lesson and analyze additional elements related to social inequality, specifically prejudice and discrimination. Until then.